Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Rise of the Phoenix, and this video is going to be a commander guide for the Tier 2 version of Aragorn. We'll talk about the skill build that I have been using on him, that I came to, it's probably a pretty obvious skill build, but I did test some slight variations of it. I'll share that with you guys, recommend some troop compositions, and talk about itemization. But before we get into any of that, if you enjoy my content, please do consider liking this video and subscribing to my channel. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Let's hop over to the commander screen and take a look at Aragorn II. So if you're in Season 1, and I guess probably if you're a new player that starts in Season 2 or Season 3, which I would highly advise against doing that, you can get this guy for $1. Quite a good deal if you have $1 to spend. He's not the best commander in the game. He's probably pretty solidly like B tier-ish. He's a damage dealing commander, even though he says balanced. I find that his commander damage build definitely way outperforms the troop buffing build, at least in my experience thus far. He's basically a slightly worse Legolas slash Gimli, but he can hold his own in PvP, in my opinion. He can hit 200k plus damage, and with really good itemization, he could probably start hitting like 250k. I would be really curious to see like a full purpled out Aragorn with all of the correct items. But let's go ahead and talk about his skill build real quick. I didn't make a skill build screenshot since I just have this guy at, I think he's respect 6 or 7 now. But, you know, I'm able to just pull up the build since he's the proper respect and also level 50. This is the build I ended up on. Dunedain Chieftain just didn't seem like point efficient, I guess you would say. You're getting 2 defense per point, and at the end you're getting 2 HP, which at first I was thinking like, hey, 2 HP, that's pretty nice. But for 15 points, I don't know. Like, if you compare that to Theoden's Respect 5 title, that's giving like 15 damage and then 5 HP. Yeah, dude, I mean, granted, Dunedain Chieftain is affecting usually units that come in 100 per command, whereas Theoden's is only affecting units that are 50 per command. But even if we double this to account for the command size difference, this would still be +4, and Theoden's is +5, and the +15 damage is way better than the defense. Another problem is that these skills just aren't super exciting. Brawling training is pretty decent, at least against evil factions. Counterattack is, I don't know, I just feel like it doesn't do enough damage, in my opinion. But you definitely want to take Anduril and all of the associated skills with it. You could potentially leave this at 14 of 15. It depends on the itemization that you want to go for. The 15th point will be worth it if you have a really nice item that you can then equip on him when he's able to ignore the race restrictions of all equipment. And these are just big damage skills, so those are kind of obvious pickups for a commander that wants to deal a lot of damage. And then we dump our extra points into Hidden Air with 1 point in Sun and Moon Splendor. So Hidden Air is just a flat damage buff for all of Aragorn's damage. This does only affect him. Gives him initiative. It only affects him, though. This does not give his entire army initiative, but still a nice little bonus. That way he can go before commanders like Grima, which, I mean, he should already outspeed Grima, but maybe there is some edge case where Grima could go first and then inflict madness on Aragorn, and then he kills his own army, and that's not good. And Sun and Moon Splendor is a very efficient for 1 point. All men in your army get stun immunity, pretty handy to have. And it reduces the damage that enemy orcs and Uruk-hai do. At some point, I would like to test whether or not dropping some points in these skills over here in order to take Sun and Moon to 7 of 7. I want to test if that's worth it against evil factions, particularly because of how powerful alchemists are. Reducing their damage by 21% could be quite useful. I think if I had like a bunch of extra points, I would probably just keep leveling up Hidden Air and this together. Um, at least if I'm at war with an evil faction. If I'm at war with a good faction, I would leave this obviously at 1 point just for the stun immunity and just keep cranking up Hidden Air. I do think there's an argument to be made for putting 2 points into Dunedain Chieftain and 1 point in Well Prepared, just so that you have that counter attack interaction that can mess with things like White Council, Arwen's title, things that get reduced anytime a unit takes damage, or even potentially avoidance. You might be able to mess with avoidance granted by like Haldir or Gandalf. So I think like 3 total points for that interaction would probably be worth it. So yeah, nobility. The problem with this skill, in my opinion, like that's a pretty decent skill overall. The issue on Aragorn is that you're probably not going to be running all men, and well, I say probably not, and then in a few minutes here, I'm going to recommend running Cataphracts with him. The real issue is that Aragorn, with this particular build, is not relying on his army to do damage. His army is going to be dying. Cataphracts don't have particularly stellar damage output, so I feel like having extra points in this instead of in damage skills is going to lower your overall damage output. Even though your Cataphracts are going to be doing more damage, Aragorn himself is going to be doing less, which means overall, that is a negative interaction there. The math works out that way, or so it seems. So let's talk about itemization, and then we can go for troops. So this is kind of sort of leftover gear that my other commanders aren't using. My main 3 commanders this season, well, at first it was Aragorn, but he kind of got benched for Éomer once I pulled him. But yeah, Gandalf, Éowyn, and Éomer. Hirgon is level 50 just for siege. I could probably have a bunch of other level 50s, but I've been a little bit lazy with mock battles this season and sweeping. Anyway, one thing that I think is quite important for Aragorn is an item that has either cleave, some type of damage proc. You could potentially use the Mirkwood Bow. It also has a damage proc, or do any of, Flay. So a weapon that has Flay that's going to allow him to ignore physical defense. Well, I say physical defense. Defense is always physical. So physical damage ignores a percent of the target's defense. This can also be solid for him as well. The weapon, I think, is one of the most important pieces of equipment on Aragorn, since he's a damage-dealing commander. You really want might. Speed is handy to have. Focus as Aragorn, like, if you get it, I guess that's okay, but certainly would not itemize for it. The reason I'm using this particular piece of gear is the damage proc on it. I don't care about the focus. I don't care about the army HP. And then I have a Durance Plate, which is quite a nice item for him, actually, because Guardians are a really good unit to give him. Or if you're playing Erebor, you can give him Iron Warriors. So I did put this on him purposely because it is giving HP to Guardians, and that is one of the units that I like to run as him. They're very cheap and expendable units. Then we have a Full Helm, Pure Might, excellent, and Melee Vigor. This is probably the best helm you can give him. There might be a better orange helm out there, but you want your melee units to take less damage, and you want might. And then as far as the accessory, this is kind of just my throwaway accessory. I think in general, a Hithlane will be better for him because it gives you might, and at 3 stars, it's going to give +2 army HP, which means you could pretty easily hit +3 army HP on dwarf units, which would be very, very solid for Guardians. If you're running 7,500 Guardians, which would be a full army of Guardians, that's 7,500 times 3, which is what, 22,500 extra HP, if my quick math is correct. So I would highly recommend, if you do want to focus on Aragorn and can get a Hithlane, I believe that is likely your best investment as far as accessories go. But like I said, at the end of the day, you really just want a whole bunch of might. If you can get some defensive stats on your gear, like melee vigor, you could also run some type of melee vigor chest, or you could even run a scale mail with Gallant. It does provide some army defense, and it gives quite a solid amount of might as well. But yeah, at the end of the day, get all the might you can. As far as armies go, there are two very simple armies that you can run on Aragorn that are highly effective. I say they're very simple because you can just go bam. 7,500 cataphracts. This is probably the best army composition you can give him for the most part, because cataphracts are incredibly tanky units. They have really solid health, defense. They have 2 damage mitigation skills that they have available to them. So the downside of this army is that it's expensive. Cataphracts take a long time to recruit, and they are expensive. I don't think I have any Guardians trained these days, but a very cheap, economical army you could run is just full Guardians, tanky. That's just exactly what he wants. Guards of the Tower, I guess, could be okay if you're fighting like Gondor or Rohan. And if you're fighting another good faction, Oathbreakers would be a nice third option. This is a bit more of a restrictive option because it does require owning an Oathbreaker camp, which isn't always easy or possible. So in general, I would tell people to lean towards Cataphracts and Guardians as the main unit to give to Aragorn, because like all damage commanders, he just wants units that aren't going to die, since commander damage is based on how much command of their army is left. So you want units that can live so that Aragorn can continue doing damage. Pretty straightforward commander, available to pretty much every player in the game, and for the price tag of $1, he's pretty darn good. I don't think I would use him as a primary tile commander, but in PvP he can certainly hold his own, and he just dishes out a very respectable amount of damage. Like I said in the beginning, a slightly worse Legolas, slightly worse Gimli in my opinion, but not everybody is going to be able to take Legolas and Gimli to Respect 3 or Respect 5, so I do think he is quite a budget-friendly option in general. Alright, that's it for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it and learned something useful. Let me know what you think about Aragorn down in the comment section below. Do you think my skill build was correct, or have you found a different skill build to be more effective? I'll catch you in the next one. Rise of the Phoenix, over and out.